Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 158, where we are going to talk about what's going on when your partner isn't really showing you his love or acting out his love for you, even when he really does love you. But before we dive into that, I want to make an exciting announcement, which is that after some deep reflection on what I'm wanting in my life and what you all are wanting and needing in terms of support around your relationships, I've decided to start offering a shorter, power-packed, one-to-one coaching package for the summer and the fall as a kind of special. And it will require less of a monetary and less of a time commitment from you, but still help you make big, wonderful, loving changes in your marriage so you can feel so much more secure, so much more connected, and so much happier in your marriage. So the doors are open for that starting now. I'll put the direct link to that description page in the show notes so you can head over there to find out what it's all about and how to work with me in this 4-month deep dive package. You can also find that page over at lifeisworthloving.com and you just click the work with me button. All right, so in today's episode, I'm going to offer you a mindset shift for slipping into this new emerging paradigm of love that I've been talking about and really into what I'm calling more power with. So everything I talk about from now on will be about steering you away from the old school marriage dynamic that I talked about in that podcast called The Emerging New Paradigm of Marriage. That's episode 155. And everything I talk about from now on is really going to be about steering you away from that old school marriage dynamic with that power over approach or those power over approaches that backfire, and into this emerging new paradigm of marriage, which really is about total power with, or another way of putting that is moving from simple personal empowerment to both personal and relationship or relational empowerment in your marriage to really make your marriage that loving, kind of collaborative, team feel, mutually supportive, mutually respectful, deeply intimate marriage that you want. So if you missed that episode 155 where I laid this all out, kind of lays the groundwork for what I'm talking about, and you might not have any idea what I'm even talking about if you haven't listened to that episode, so definitely go check out episode 155. You've got to listen to that. And I am also going to be sharing more soon to clarify and deepen some of what I said in that episode, including this idea of power over dynamics, which may sound more kind of shameful or awful than it actually is. So sit tight for that soon. But one thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and one thing I've seen over and over again with my clients, is this sense of hurt and anger and kind of exasperation when their significant other isn't loving them the way they think they should be loved and in the way they want to be loved. So in other words, when their partner might love them and they can even say, yes, I do think he loves me, or yes, he definitely loves me, but he's not showing it obviously through his actions, right? So this is something that happens, I think, for many of us. And an example of it might be, many of my clients like affectionate touch, for example. Like they feel loved when their partner gives affectionate touch, like, an arm around their shoulder or something. And what might happen is she might try to snuggle in and kind of cozy up to him when they're sitting on the couch or something and kind of wrap his arm around her. And her partner might actually, after a moment, move his arm back away, back to himself, right? Or another example of this might be some of my clients like to be wined and dined, right? Or taken out. And their partner might not ever plan things like plan dates for them or take them out on a date, of his own accord. Or, for other people, maybe their partner doesn't initiate repairs like we talked about last week. Or some of my clients feel really cared about when their partner or someone is able to listen to and really hear them deeply when she's sharing something meaningful to her. And her partner might not listen very empathetically. So these are examples of where they don't feel loved or they don't see his actions as very loving. And when this is going on in your relationship, there's often so much strife and insecurity that can come from that, right? When his actions don't obviously illustrate his love. And even if, a woman's partner tells her he loves her, she may not be able to fully believe it because in her eyes, his actions aren't lining up with those words. So this might sound familiar to you. Now, of course, surely these women's partners are not expressing their love in the most obvious way to their wives. And they certainly could be a lot better at showing it in a way that their wives can take in. And ultimately, I want you to be able to call your partner into being better at showing his love in a way that you best receive it. Of course, that's always going to be a goal in our relationships, right? But much of the pain and disconnection these women feel is because of not recognizing the love that is there, not seeing the ways in which it is being shown. And this oftentimes comes from expecting their partner's love to look a certain way. So when it comes in other forms, it just goes unnoticed. But just because you can't see a thing clearly does not mean it isn't there. So if any of this is sounding familiar to you and or maybe going on for you in your relationship, please know, oftentimes these men, our men, are just kind of bumbling along with full-on love for you. I know this is true because of conversations I've had with men and things I've seen in my own life, and certainly from, years and years of coaching women, talking to women about their relationships. And because I've been there too. I've been there personally in my life in a place where I'm hearing that I'm loved and cared for, but I'm not really seeing the actions that make that obvious to me. Right. And this has happened not just in my marriages where I could, like in my first marriage, I could see lots of places where he wasn't loving me in the most obvious way. But also he was telling me that he loved me tons. Right. But I've also had a couple of experiences with dear old friends that really stand out. So for me, being in touch with friends, like having occasional communication, not like super frequent, but communicating sometimes, being in touch is a way that I feel loved and connected, right? Now with these two people who I was deeply bonded with for a long time in my life, at a certain point in our relationships, I would reach out to them, through the phone or a message, and I'd hear nothing back, like no response, like no text hearting, just like zero. And then some weeks later, I'd think of them again, or months later maybe, and reach out again. And again, nothing in response. And for one of them, at a certain point, I remember I wrote something like, I hope it doesn't bother you that I keep writing you. And he wrote back a couple weeks later, he said, silly girl, of course not. And I hope you'll grow more and more confident that you really matter to me. So I felt reassured And then I continued to make my occasional check-ins with, guess what? Once again, no reply. So did this make it easy to feel confident that I matter to him? Obviously not, right? But I decided to not make it mean he doesn't care or that I don't matter, and to consider what might be really going on there for him. So I'm going to share some of that in a few minutes, like what could be going on there for people who aren't able to obviously act out their love to us. So sit tight for that. But with another friend, it was a very similar experience, right? I would write her or call her, and then I wouldn't hear anything back. And this went on for a long time. Every once in a while I'd hear back, but rarely. And then a couple summers ago, she reached out and invited me to visit with her because she was going to be close by. And we got together, and it was so clear when we saw each other how much she still loves me. Like there was zero doubt in my mind. Like I could see it written all over her face and in her way of being with me. So again, just because someone isn't actively making it obvious that they love you, they can still totally, deeply love and adore you. Now, it might be a good moment to just take a little look at the word love. So there is love, the noun, and to love, the verb, right? There is like the feeling of love, right? That feeling. And then there is the action of loving. And we can have lots of the feeling of love. We can be filled with the feeling of love and not take a lot of action on that love. Or there can be not a lot of putting that love into obvious action. Or there can be actioning that love in a way a person might not recognize as love. So an interesting question that I've kind of been pondering is, does a person who loves you really have to show it regularly just so you'll know that they love you? Such an interesting question. Personally, I believe it's lovely when they do show you they love you regularly, but it's not necessary, right? Like, I know my kid loves me, but he's not like expressing that to me left and right. Yeah. I think it only feels like it's needed when we're kind of insecure, when we're insecure about our relationship, when we're insecure in ourselves. And if you think about it, your insecurity is not a great reason for someone else to have to change. In other words, your insecurity is your business, not necessarily your partner's. That doesn't mean we don't want our partner to learn to be sensitive to it. Of course we do. But honestly, your insecurity is something that's yours to take care of and grow out of. I mean, think about it. Because you can't believe in yourself or his love for you enough, that means he needs to change. To me, that's not really a great kind of equation. Maybe you learning to believe in yourself and his love is what needs to change. I know there's so much more power there because that is what you actually can control. You can control that. And of course, once again, you can't control him or his actions. And when you don't need your partner to be constantly speaking kind of a foreign language to them, expressing love in the way you best receive it instead of expressing love in the way that comes naturally to them. When you don't need that just to feel loved, you're actually likely to see your partner loving you more because he will feel lighter and freer to express that love. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will absolutely understand what I'm talking about because I've talked about this so much. But over and over, I see that the insecurity in women drives them to be more critical, more angry, more cold, more edgy, more snappy, more defensive with their spouse. And that's usually met with coldness or shutdown or anger from that spouse. So in other words, less loving behavior is acted out from their spouse when women feel insecure and act from that insecurity. So when you're secure in his love for you, you act more at ease, more loving, more open, more kind, and he feels safer to act out his love for you. I see this over and over and over again. It's like magic. And also, when you're secure in his love for you and in your own lovability, and you're just like, that means secure in being an awesome person, and that of course people are going to love you, and of course your partner is going to love you, you just feel like all is well between you, right? It's so much easier to just feel safe, secure, and satisfied in your relationship. And it's from that place you're going to be able to be better able to ask for the very specific things in the very specific moments to meet your desires to be, say, cuddled or told I love you or wined and dined or whatever it is that you like, whatever way it is that you like to feel loved. So the good news is any insecurity in you around any of this can become security in his love for you. And you will feel so much better and be better positioned to invite him to love you in a way that you like better when you feel more secure in his love for you. This can be built by learning to deeply love and believe in yourself and insourcing your sense of value and worth. Of course, this is why this is always something we look at, always something we dive into and build. It's one of the 3 sort of tenets of the work that I do. And of course, some of us need this more than others, but with my work, there's almost always some or a lot of that to do, depending on the person. And I do have an earlier episode. It's called Insourcing Validation instead of Outsourcing It. That's episode 34. It's a great one to kind of understand this and even start building a little bit more of this security on your own. But you can also build that security by actually understanding your partner better and what might be happening for him that he would not express that love that he has for you in the ways you think it should be expressed or want it to be expressed. So let's take a few minutes and really try to understand that when he's not expressing or showing his love, obviously on the regular or at certain times, it doesn't mean he does not love you. In fact, he can adore you and still not be super expressive of it in the way you most take that love in. So are you ready to hear some reasons why that might be going on? I'm going to give you a bunch right now. Now, keep in mind, these are just the ones that I thought of off the top of my head. There are probably more. So you can go ahead and think of your own as well. But here are 10 reasons I came up with. So the first one is he may have so much of his own, quote, stuff to deal with that he has no leftover energy or capacity to demonstrate his love. Reason number 2, he may have other feelings occurring at the same time that are confusing him in his capacity to act out his love for you. So what I mean by that is, he can feel love, but he also might be feeling some conflicting feelings like shame or unworthiness or stress or frustration with you or something going on in the relationship, right? So that can really limit his capacity to access and express that love actively. Reason 3, he may have had past experiences that unconsciously taught him that it wasn't safe to express his love in certain ways, in ways like the ways that you might most recognize as love. And it's important to note that this can be past experiences with you or past experiences in other relationships or even as a child, right? Okay, reason number 4, he may be so stressed out that he can't access an active sense of his love for you, even though it's definitely there. So we live in a pretty stressful modern world. Like our modern lives, for most of us, are highly stressful. And if there's one thing that's going to zap our access to being loving, it's being stressed. If our nervous system is regularly or chronically dysregulated, we can't access that part of us that's the common connect system, which is where love kind of lives and is easily shown. So stress. Reason 5, he may be distracted by a million other things and just not so conscious of how much it means to you for him to keep expressing his love for you or acting that love out. Right? So in other words, there might be so much else going on. And since he may not be super aware that it's important for you that he expresses his love in certain ways, he's just not going to be doing it because it doesn't feel like a priority. Number 6, he may have been taught to express his love as a service, such as calling the plumber or being the plumber or fixing your bike or bringing in the firewood, right? So he might, in other words, he might not know how to express or act out his love for you in other ways. I see this so often with my clients' partners, is that their main kind of love language is service. I think it's very common for men. And I think in many ways they're socialized, and maybe it's just biological instinct, right? That caretaking in these ways, these service-based ways, is actually to them an expression of their love, but it might not be so much how you best receive it. So that might be his way of expressing love. And he might not know other ones. So number 7, he may feel very vulnerable and uncomfortable, is what that can mean, to act out his love in touchy-feely or verbal ways. After all, this is definitely not a strength of sort of the old school masculinity, and therefore repression or discomfort with this part of love, right? This more open, affectionate part of love is really common still, particularly for men. Obviously not all men, but this could be part of what's going on for your partner. Number 8, he may have been expressive with his love as a child, or obviously expressive with his love, but then had it squashed out of him by people who told him he's too sissy or sensitive, or it's not okay to show your emotions, right? That's so common in our world, that these little boys, I talk about it a fair amount on this podcast, that these beautiful, loving little souls, these little boys come into this world being themselves, being expressive of love, and then run into situations or people and messaging that are like, no, that's not what boys do, right? And so that squashes that out because it seizes them up with shame and makes it seem like it's wrong to be the person who expresses love in these ways. So this can depend on how your husband or your partner was raised, if might be going on for him, but it's probably going on for many or most men to some degree because it's such a common cultural message that boys can't really fully escape. All right, number 9, he may feel or may have felt that when he expressed his love, it wasn't met and returned to him in equal measure. So that means in this relationship with you, it's very possible that he expressed his love at a certain point and somehow it wasn't met by you or returned to him. And that can really scare them, can scare someone to not feel safe anymore to keep expressing that love. So that might be something to look at for you. Like, has something happened in your past, or has something happened many times in the past that might make him in the present less safe feeling to express that love that he does still have for you. And number 10, he may not have any clue how much it would mean to you for him to express his love in certain ways. Yeah? Many people feel love for their spouse and think it's obvious, so they don't recognize it's not really being conveyed very well. And part of this can be that you have a high need to see that love from him, or have so far had that kind of high quote unquote need to feel that love from him or see that love from him. And he doesn't have that same high need to see it from you. And so he can't understand why he would need to repeatedly express it and make it obvious to you, right? Because to him, it's just a fact that he loves you. And it's easy for him to feel loved by you. So why wouldn't you feel loved by him? I think this is almost 2 reasons in this number 10. And to pull out the other piece of this is that maybe you haven't expressed to him exactly how you best feel loved and asked him, made direct requests for him to, show up for you in those ways. Like if you haven't asked directly, possibly repeatedly, and helped him understand how to do that and maybe given him more clues and hints when to do that, then it's no wonder he's not expressing his love to you. So that is almost, we could even call that reason 11, because so many of us, so many of you might not be actually asking because he's not going to be a mind reader, right? It's just a simple fact. So requests are beautiful for this. All right. So in the simplest sense, we can kind of summarize all of these reasons, 1 to 11, I guess, as A, he may feel unsafe for a variety of reasons to show his love in certain ways. B, he may be too distracted or busy with other things and stressed out. And C, he may not be conscious of what you want or conscious enough of what you want to make that extra effort that it entails from his end. Yeah? So that's all of it in a nutshell right there. So you can see that it's very easy for someone to love you, but not have an easy time acting that out in obvious ways, right? That's what I'm hoping you're going to take from this episode, if nothing else. And just because that might be happening, it doesn't mean your relationship is doomed or you won't ever feel loved. Because if he loves you, then you ought to feel loved, because it is a fact. He loves you. There is love there. And now you can learn to let it in, even if he doesn't always express it well. And you can also support him in expressing his love more and more in ways that you like to receive that love. And this is, of course, a whole skill set and one I coach my clients to be amazing at. This is that whole opening the door and inviting him to grow into that loving partner you want thing that I talk about a lot, right? That's at the heart of my approach. It's this whole stepping into quote unquote power with, so that you become that couple with so much security and loving acceptance of the fullness of who you each are, with lots of connection and lightness and joy between you. So today we took a step together in helping you start to understand what might be going on, that he's not the best love expresser. And if you want to take that a lot further and build this whole skill set that I was just talking about and get to this place of so much more loving security and all that connection and lightness and joy between you, absolutely come coach with me in my new short one-on-one coaching package. I would absolutely love to help you get there. And once again, the link to learn more and apply for a spot is in the show notes or at my website, www.lifeisworthloving.com. All right, my beauties, please know in 99.999% of marriages, you are loved. Your partner loves you for real. And he might just not be a master at showing it. But that never means that you have to feel unloved. Be oh so well, my friends.